Right, good evening. Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting of September 11th, 2024. I think we'll begin tonight with our roll call.
Commissioner Sy,
Oh, you can.
Commissioner Woodward,
Present.
Chair Williams,
Present.
and Commissioner DeFever and Vice Chair Amir are absent.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So before we turn to noticed agenda items for the evening, it's an opportunity for members of the public to weigh in and comment on any matters that are not on the agenda. If anyone wishes to make a public comment, now would be the time to do so. I don't see anyone in the audience who has anything to say. Is there anyone online?
There's no public comments.
Okay, great. Well, then I'll ask staff if there are any updates or briefings for us. Any?
I have no updates except for congratulations on the MARTA. I'm so glad that that went through. Excellent work, Chair Williams. We appreciate everything that you've done. And then I believe our town attorney wants to speak to the item that's before you with respect to the election of the chair and vice chair.
Great.
Yeah, so it just says election of chair and vice chair, and it's not properly agendized as an action item. So we are not taking action on that tonight, and it's for next meeting or whenever it's on the agenda as an action item.
Okay, great. So we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
One more meeting for you, Chair.
Oh, no. You know
Still-
what?
we're still there.
Yeah. No, that's okay. I'll take one for the team. One more for the team.
Otherwise, we were just gonna
Yeah.
find Kathleen,
Yeah.
Daniel.
Exactly. I know. That would have been a great way to handle it.
That's what happens when you're not here.
Yeah. So I know we don't have any minutes to review this evening, so we'll skip over to the noticed action item, which is considering transitioning to a sort of a new format for planning commission minutes.
Yes, Chair and Planning Commissioners, we've brought this forward to the Design Review Board as well, and the City Council has changed to this style of minutes. And part of the reasoning is that we believe that it's number one financially, it costs about $10,000 a year for us to do minutes, not to mention the time that it takes both for staff and for the Planning Commission to review those. That's okay. However, when either one of us reviews those, we sometimes take liberty in what they become. So they're not actually verbatim minutes at the end of the day. Seeing it that we have video that is recorded forever on YouTube now as well, that the necessity of a verbatim document is not really as pertinent or as required. And the action minutes do exactly what you need, which is to talk about what the summary of the condensed comments. And then any planning commission meeting comments. It doesn't need to be specific to everything that everybody said, but we need to look at the action. We need to look at what the project is so that we know what the vote is. And so it does a synopsis basically. And it just seems to be a more efficient and cleaner way to do it for us. And other boards have gone with this and done it. And of course, it's allowed legally. We're not required to do minutes. And in fact, the Clerks Association also supports this method. So I'm bringing it forward to you to support that decision to change or ask me questions as to why you may not want to do that. But that's what the report is tonight. For the action tonight is for you to direct staff to prepare or transition to action minutes for Planning Commission. And with that, I'm here for questions.
I just have one clarifying question, I think, because
Sure.
I did read that the recommendation is to transition to action minutes. And the really interesting memorandum from the City Clerks Association on just, provided such helpful context for how to think about this. They distinguish between action and summary minutes. And when you were describing the kind of minutes that you're recommending for moving forward, it sounded like there was some summary, that there'd be some summary of comments.
It probably won't be comments. I might have misspoken on that piece, but it will be who made the motion, who seconded the motion, what that motion was, what the vote was, and a little synopsis of what the project was as a whole. So that would be the action
Okay,
minutes.
great. Yeah, just that's what my understanding.
I
of the
think I
recommendation,
misspoke
yeah.
a little bit, got a little carried away there.
How
Sorry.
does that work for public comments, for the members of the public who speak?
Those get put on.
They
into
get
the
put
summary
on
minutes,
just
yes.
as, so in summary format of
Yes.
so-and-so said, opposed or supported.
Exactly.
Okay, that was,
We
thank you.
cannot leave that part out.
Right. That's my, any other questions for staff before we discuss the merits?
How
or
is, how
demerits?
is council doing it?
That council's doing action minutes at this time as well. So design review board is, the council is, and, I don't know if any other boards or commissions have switched, but, now we're before you.
Commissioner Woodward, any questions or,
I have no questions. I'm supportive of the motion.
Commissioner Sai?
Yeah, same here. I see no reason why we wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it probably is incredibly time consuming and costly for the town. And very interesting to learn that, we are recording comments of the legislative body, not necessarily of every individual, of every member of the commission. And that would be captured in these action minutes. And there also is the video that people can refer to, as well as attending meetings if people want to hear what everyone says verbatim. So I fully support the motion as well. I'm not the motion. I think we would recommend changing.
I think we need to,
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I need a motion.
yeah. So I'll make that motion
I'll-
and hopefully my fellow commissioners will support that, a motion to
I'll second
convert
it.
to action minutes.
Oh,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm a little rusty after a few weeks off.
Don't have any item.
A long few
No
weeks.
opposition.
A busy few weeks.
if something
We
went
shouldn't
on.
All right, motion carries. Yeah.
Oh, we should have opened public comment for it as well. Sorry. A little
No.
Sloppy tonight, but you may
we
want
are.
to,
We're having it, no. Well, should I?
before the
before the
motion,
Motion. open
yeah, we
public
need to
comment,
open up
see if
for
there's-
public
yeah, So
comment.
we'll open this up for public comment to see if anyone has any comments or feedback on how to consider this. Anyone here? No. Anyone online?
Chair Williams, there's no public comment.
Okay, I'll close public comment and I'll remake the motion.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Great. Okay, now we'll actually turn to the public hearing items for this evening. And the first one is our consideration of a conditional use permit relating to 27 Main Street, which is the Sam's Anchor Cafe. And this is a permit for a fast casual restaurant.
Yes, it is. And as you may know or may not know, this was originally a retail store or has been a retail store, Paparazzi, for a long time, which closed. I think the most important part to note here is that this building is attached to Sam's, and Sam's proposes to use this as an additional space for takeout. Right now, when you go in for takeout at Sam's, it's sitting right in the middle of the bar area, which isn't convenient, and the kitchen goes across and the bar is being served, and so creates a little more chaos. And it isn't as efficient as it could be. So Sam's intends to expand their operation, or I would say allow takeout within this space and improve it so that you can come in, order your food, and the food would be delivered through a connected area of the building. One of the things that we know is that the same employees for Sam's will be staffing this as well. And so we didn't see that there would be an increase or intensity and need for additional parking spaces as a result of additional employees. There's no seating at this restaurant, so it also changes how we evaluate the parking, which is sort of dictating some of this. The idea is that this would be open during the time where people may be coming out of a show or coming in for lunch or getting off the ferry. It's kind of a quick way. It's kind of a, we don't have any takeout that I'm aware of in downtown. It's just solely a takeout restaurant. I believe it will serve a population that may want to quickly, they have a bunch of kids coming off the ferry, they get a bunch of hamburgers and go home. There will be alcoholic beverages that will be served as well, but they will serve in compliance with state law. So it's not as if they'll be drinking inside the establishment. You have to take them with you. Those containers are regulated. How you do this is regulated by the state. We don't get involved in that piece. So I know that Sam's will go forward with that as required by law. So originally, the applicant did want to remain open till at least 2:30 in the morning. We didn't feel that that was necessary, and that many of the restaurants do not stay open that late, and that the takeout clientele probably won't be looking at that. We felt that it would be much more kind of, I don't know, amenable, but much more appropriate that we look at the cinema, when the last time the cinema closes, last show's at 11 o'clock. So the recommended hours for the hold would be weekdays for lunch and dinner from noon to 11 PM. And on weekends from 10 AM to 11 PM, allotting for, you know, a brunch kind of thing. This is supported, this type of use is supported by the general plan because we're encouraging commercial uses in the downtown. And it also, I think, will add to the economic vitality of downtown and kind of a good mix of uses. They are going to be required to get 3 spaces, and they'll be required, as we have with many other restaurants, to show us that they have that lease to allow for 3 additional spaces to account for the floor area and, you know, anybody that may come in and park. I think that this is totally within a reasonable amount. We do, you know, you do have a right to consider that. And I think that a lot of people who are going to use this space are not going to come and solely park and get the takeout. I can't say 100%, but a great number of people may be coming off the ferry, as I said, or going to Angel Island, grabbing some food to go, or getting out of a movie and needing to feed the family. So I think we can make these findings for the conditional use permit that I show you on page 3, the use permit regulations, and then the findings that are necessary on page 4. I think we can certainly support this, and I think that I believe it will be a great addition to downtown, something new and innovative, and hopefully very, very successful, and provides an amenity that people need. And with that, I know that the applicant's representative is here and available to make a presentation. I'm here to answer any questions either now or whenever, so.
Quick
Go ahead,
question,
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, no,
Quick question, what are the current, I think, I saw it in here, I just want to make sure I understand it right. The current hours for Sam's, I'm not talking about the proposed establishment, is until 2:30 in the morning?
Well, I don't know if there's service until that time. I do know that the website advertises a 2:30 closing.
Their Sam's is allowed to be open until 2:30, is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
I think what you regulated at one time was the live entertainment,
mhm.
but
Got it.
service, yeah.
Do you know by law what time they are allowed to serve alcohol until? Is it also 2:30?
I believe that last call is earlier than that, but I'm not definitely sure. I think it's more like 1 in the morning after
Right.
that time.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, I had a similar question, which is, I understand that the bar is open, people are leaving at 2:30. Really good question about when alcohol is stopped, when they stop serving alcohol, and also when does takeout stop serving? I would imagine, but this is just an assumption, that takeout is in line with sort of restaurant, kitchen hours. I think the restaurant probably, Sam's Restaurant stops
So
much
because
earlier
we
than the
don't,
bar.
because we don't have authority to regulate alcohol, ABC does regulate the hours and the way in which
Ah, right,
alcohol is served. So I didn't get into those details with the
Right.
conditional use permit. What I did include is a condition of approval that requires
saw
that
that,
there's an ABC
Yeah,
approval for
yeah.
this prior to beginning operation.
right,
Because from what I understand, there will need to be somewhat of an amendment to their existing service of alcohol because it's not in the same location. It's takeout and not sit down. So I'm sure that ABC will be engaged, but
Right.
I don't, and I'm turning to the attorney, but I don't believe that's really in our purview to regulate that. ABC will do that.
Yeah, and my second question was a little different. That's really helpful though to know that that's regulated by ABC, and so, and that is definitely a condition of the
Yes,
recommended.
It
yeah.
is in my conditions.
But the second question was really when does the restaurant, you said that takeout currently happens within the restaurant. When does that stop? When do they stop providing takeout food?
Well,
Which
that's
is
what
different
the
from-
hours of operation that I suggest. So that would mean that service of food. So in the conditions of the hours of operation of the takeout restaurant, so I separated it out from shall be weekdays from noon to 11 PM and weekends from 10 to 11. So during that time, they could be serving food
Right.
and people could be taking that.
Yeah, I
food out.
understand that. I was just wondering about the current takeout, the current operation.
Oh,
within
I
the
think it
restaurant.
probably isn't related to the restaurant itself.
Right,
yeah.
the hours, yeah.
And Dina, was the hours of noon to 11 PM, the noon side of that, was that a request from the applicant, or did you just mirror that to what their current hours?
I
are?
mirrored it to what Sam's begins service for lunch at noon. And on weekends, there's a brunch at 10. So I tried to mirror those two. I'm sure his representative could speak a little bit more on that, but that's where I took those hours from. It was really hard to tell on the website. I also looked at other restaurants within Main Street to provide this in an equal manner. And, this is, I think, a great use of this space and a great addition. So I did want to be as liberal as possible, but also had to take into account the residents who live in that area and their sensitivity to noise.
I'm sorry, I'm more focused on the beginning hours than the end hours. And I'm wondering why you wouldn't suggest an earlier start time. So if the applicant at some point in time decides, I want to serve breakfast, I want to open up for lunch before noon, that they don't have to come back and again revisit the conditional use permit. It seems like relatively low impact to say it could start at 8 AM or something to that effect, even if I was just curious.
I only did it as looking at what the other restaurant, I think that's a perfectly valid change to the resolution. And if the commission so desires, I don't think that that'll be a negative impact as long as they don't start serving before like 8 or 9 so that everybody in the adjacent neighborhood gets concerned.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think that's a perfectly legitimate change.
And you said in the staff report that the other restaurants in the area generally are open until about 10 PM, sort of a general time, other than the
That's a
cinema.
general, other than the bungalow that's opened up later, most of them close by 10 o'clock. In that immediate area, the new Servinos is open a little bit later, but it's further up on Arc Row. So it wouldn't have the same kind of synergy with this one.
Great. Any other questions before we ask the applicant to come up and give a presentation?
No,
And what,
none of mine.
and welcome. Yeah, come up to the microphone and just state your name, and you have 20 minutes. You don't have to use the entire 20-minute allotment of time. But we'll start the clock, and if you could state your name.
Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Evan Cross. I'm the architect for the project and I've worked with Sam for quite some time. We did the renovation 5 or 6 years ago, which is very involved. Took quite a bit of work. Thank you, Dina, for going over all that. It's a fascinating opportunity. I don't know if you know the history of the building, but we're talking way back into the 20s. The building is actually on the same property. It looks like a separate building, but it's really connected. The restaurant offices are upstairs. The owners, love their location. which has always presented some interesting conversations because it's a very difficult location. Not only is it a difficult location in terms of parking and access and the narrow street, but if you look at the layout of Sam's, it's a very unusual restaurant. The public walkway is right down the middle. There's back of house on either side. The bathrooms are up front, the dining's in the back, the deck's this way. You know, it's all through one little door, and they're cherished, they're loved. People come there for a variety of things, to sit out in the sun, to go to the bar, to bring family to the restaurant for a real sit-down meal, and takeout. And all of this is colliding. And so when they came to me and said, look, we really want to figure out what to do with this adjacent building, it was one of those sort of, well, what are your inhibitions or problems to solve now, and what are you good at? And through the pandemic, a lot of restaurants learned that the takeout option was really popular with people who say, well, we don't want to spend an entire evening, but we do want to patronize our favorite restaurants, grab some food and go. And currently that's just a jumble right now. Your question earlier, I think, Commissioner Williams, about when does the takeout really stop? People will finish the meal and then put in a last order. Oh, can I get something from the kitchen to go, very late because, long night or something. So it's haphazard. And so in looking at the layout of the plan, we said, this adjacent space connected to the back of the house, part of the existing restaurant, was the perfect opportunity to start to organize and clean this up and offer a sort of secondary face, but not something entirely new and different to the community, but a place where people could come and go and partake in Sam's. We looked at other options, variety of mixed use, things like that, and it became this is probably what they're good at and probably what the community wants in terms of a little better access, not a congested access or a noisy or jumbled shouting over a bartender to say, where's my pickup order at the bar when people are doing other stuff. So this gives us a chance to sort of organize that and clean it all up. I would take only one moment to really encourage your, if you guys are interested in the restaurant business, you're already asking the right questions. And in terms of the operating hours, paralleling the restaurant is actually pretty important. And earlier hours, and it's not that Sam's, is making demands for like the sky. It's just that they want to be able to do what people expect of them in general. And then there's opportunity for improving. Breakfast option, for example, the idea that someone would come down, headed to the ferry, and then would come in and say, can I grab a cup of coffee and then a lobster roll to pack in my lunch and get on the ferry for the day? And that's the whole idea of the quick and go restaurant, is get what you want from the restaurant, but grab it and go to the rest of your day. We could see a group of kids who are headed to Angel Island coming in the morning and saying, can we just have Sam's prepare a few packed lunches for us? So if it's ensconced in the staff report, that's fine. If it's possible to reconsider, we'd love to see the open opportunity, say from 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. so that after the movie lets out, if people want to grab some food to take home, that's still possible. They're not sort of coming out of the movie and everything's closed. It's really not that much longer. And it's really a matter of encouraging business and the success of business in the area, not just sort of, grabbing whatever hours are possible, but making it possible for businesses to serve their community in different ways. And maybe there isn't a huge breakfast demand, but we'll never know unless we give it a try. So happy to answer any questions. We know we're going through design review. We put a lot of care into sort of the options of how to do that on that tight street. We look forward to that. And we look forward to opening.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Questions for the applicant?
I don't have any for the applicant.
Only one. Do you happen to know the time according to the ABC license when last call?
I don't, not off the top of my head.
I think it's midnight.
I think you might be right.
I've been to San Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so I'll now open up the public hearing for folks who wish to comment on this item. There's really no one else here with us tonight to speak, so we'll see if there's anyone online.
Chair Williams, there's no public.
All right, okay, well, I'll close the public comment and return it to the commission for discussion. Does Commissioner Scheid.
I'm happy to start. I'm prepared to support this CUP with a couple of exceptions that I would recommend to the commission for consideration. The first of which pertains to the recommended hours from staff. That's in number 6 of the resolution. I think that there should be no restriction on the closing time for the restaurant. Well, that's not true. I think that that's not true. I think, right, wow, that's dramatic. I think that the hours for closing time should run with the main restaurant. In my view, there is no evidence that we have, and we've not even heard any contrary arguments that there is going to be any unique noise problems or other nuisance issues if the takeout establishment were to have the same hours that run with the main restaurant. I like a lot Commissioner Woodward's question, which also had an idea pinned to it too, that we should also look at the opening hours as being before, I think it's recommended to be noon. I think noon is the time when the main restaurant opens. That said, pinning it right now at noon really restricts the establishment's ability to grow beyond what we're thinking today. And this was Commissioner Woodward's idea. I would support 7 a.m. if it's acceptable to the applicant, because that does sound very traditionally like a coffee breakfast type of concept that would then give this this establishment room to grow. So that's as to number 6. And again, to repeat, it would be a recommendation for the commission to consider that the hours be set at 7 a.m. to open and to close at no later than 2:30 in the morning. And I say 2:30 because I understand 2:30 is the current closing time for Sam's. And by the way, just to make sure, in case any of us are wrong, we could also write it as no later than the current allowed closing time for Sam's. Just in case we're wrong. That's not
Are you-
2:30.
Maybe you should say existing, just in case they
Existing,
change.
yes.
And I haven't been to Sam's in a while. I have been there many times over the last many decades to eat and to go to the bar. But is there a distinction between do the restaurant hours run until 2:30?
What I know is that, excuse me, that was the original request to allow for that.
Yeah.
I would say that the alcohol service probably ends. I'm not gonna, I don't know if it's 12 or 1, but it's somewhere in that area. It's definitely not till 2:30, but I don't know if the kitchen serves. So rather than having to extend this to another hearing, I would say you could draft the reso so
Yeah.
that it says 7 a.m. to no later than the existing closing time.
I think that's
For the
all.
kitchen hours, for the.
Or just the
kind of
restaurant
Food
itself.
service.
Yeah, but I don't know that we need those extra words, only because the takeout establishment is food.
Right.
And so we'd be pinning the closing hours to the restaurant's hours. As far as
Exactly.
the service of alcohol is concerned,
Yeah.
that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, yeah.
That's governed by
Yeah.
ABC.
No, I'm
and like-
comfortable with that, the restaurant, using that
Yeah.
word, the restaurant. Yeah.
The other suggestion for the commission's consideration is number 8, which might involve a question as well to Dina. So number 8 says, as a condition, no outside display of merchandise or advertising is permitted other than posting of the restaurant menu and parking location and parking validation. I'm not entirely sure I understand what that means. I think that the business should be allowed to post advertising merchandise, say, in the window. I think they should be allowed to put signage outside. But I frame it, Dina, as a question because I may be misunderstanding what you're talking about.
So when we talk about outside display, we're talking more about what's happening outside of the storefront. They definitely can have a certain percentage of signs on the front of their building. If they want to show a picture of their breakfast burrito, they can certainly do that. We don't preclude that. What we don't allow is for you to have kind of
A-frame.
A-frames on the sidewalk with pictures on them, or bringing out a table with stuff on it onto the sidewalk. So that's what I mean by outdoor display. I do not mean by window displays.
Okay.
That would be very different.
Number 8 is consistent with a condition we impose on other
That is correct.
restaurant establishments. Okay,
That's
thank you.
correct.
So I'll withdraw that one.
It's
as
a pretty
far as
standard,
condition.
it's a pretty standard one for us. We will not preclude them from advertising within the window or saying open or hours or pictures of lovely sandwiches.
So just so I'm clear on on the exception, and it's to number 6, it's just hours of operation. And so I certainly on the weekdays, you're saying 7 AM to closing time for the existing restaurant. Is that true for weekends as well? Is that your recommendation across the
Yes.
board?
Yes, that the opening time would be, and in fact, if you think about it, on the weekends, you could foresee that down the road, if this is successful, that they may even want to open earlier only because people on the weekends might kind of do their jogs down through by the shoreline, things like that. But I think worded in such a way to say no earlier than 7 AM. And the weekday weekend distinction goes away, no earlier than 7 AM and no later than the existing closing time for the restaurant.
Okay. Commissioner Woodward.
Yes, I'm also prepared to support this opportunity to allow Sam's to expand its footage and leverage space that it already owns. I think it's a great use case and perfectly in line with the idea of vitality downtown and creating more restaurants and more people and giving them more choices. And the idea around having it potentially be available in the morning, especially for commuters and people who are taking the ferry. For sure, I'm all for the breakfast burritos in the windows, not outside on the signs. But so I think that there are a lot of different potential use cases. I hope that they're successful in a number of them, and glad that we can kind of give them the latitude to do that. It's interesting. I was looking up while the applicant was speaking all of the closing times per Google Maps, right? So it's not official, but generally speaking, the companies are interacting with those. And for the most part, it's like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, even Sam's is 10 o'clock every night as posted on there. Now, obviously, if people are there and, it's their latitude as to keeping it open. But I think tying it to the wording as proposed by Commissioner Sy, I think makes perfect sense. And then it just allows it to be in line with whatever was previously approved for that establishment versus getting into their hours are more or less than Servino's or more or less than the movie theater. It's already been approved. We're just tying this conditional use permit to that. So I think that makes perfect sense. And I don't have any other questions or thoughts around it. So.
Yeah, thank you. I would agree. I think it's a very sensible approach going forward. I think it's a great idea. I absolutely think that, Sam's already brings such vitality to the downtown area. And I think a lot of people would welcome an additional option for takeout. I know I would. And I do really like this approach that Commissioner Sy has come up with, which is and Commissioner Woodward together have come up with to give you more latitude to try something earlier if that's what works for the business, and would be a great service to the community, and also to tether the closing hours to the existing closing hours of your restaurant. I think that makes it's a very sensible approach, and I'm fully supportive of it as well.
Can I ask one question now that you said that? When we say the existing closing hours, those are dictated by what has been approved by the town as opposed to, so said another way, if the restaurant itself were to decide to close at 10 PM because they didn't have people in there sitting down, but the takeout wanted to stay up until midnight. And
I think the solution is to say the phrasing would be under the existing hours as authorized by CUP number.
So let me just make sure you understand Sam's does not have a CUP because they've been in existence before the town.
Oh.
So there is, the only CUP that Sam's has is for the outdoor music that
I
you
see.
put in place.
Well,
I don't
is
remember
there
how many
any-
years ago.
Is there anything that governs the time they're allowed to close currently? Is there a?
I mean, is there an ordinance
is there an
citywide about?
ordinance?
Not that I'm aware of.
So what could a business today, separate from a CUP that otherwise governs it, decided wants to operate 24 hours a day? I'm talking about, again, a salt and
We
pepper.
really don't have a 24-hour a day allowance here because we don't have like a 7-Eleven, those types of things. We have gas stations, but
23 and a half hours. a day.
23 and a half hours, perhaps. The only thing I would caution you about that, I am in favor of this. I think this will be a great addition to downtown. I also want to make sure that I get calls from residents when delivery trucks come at
Right.
6:59. I get calls from residents when somebody slams a door too much because the people are leaving and the valets aren't doing what they're supposed to do. So that's why I would caution you with respect to just opening the door for this, because I won't have a way in which to maybe regulate the noise or any kind of impact that this may have. I want it to be successful. I don't want to handcuff it, but I think we should set something that's in relation to either alcohol service or, midnight.
So I mean, I just don't agree.
Okay.
I mean, respectfully, I just don't agree. I don't, we cannot control whether there will be complaints. That's not to say we should not be mindful and thoughtful about making sure we prevent inconveniences to people where possible. But at this moment in time, they are theoretical, right? Theoretical in terms of what the noise could be, theoretical in terms of what the complaints could be. I think, because what Commissioner Woodward raised is a really smart point, and the answer you gave is that there is nothing either in ordinance or CUP, because there isn't otherwise an existing CUP, that limits when they can close. Now, the reality is that Sam's, like every other business, closes because it's absolutely unaffordable and not cost efficient to keep your business open. So, but I think given that there is otherwise no limit, I think
I want to,
pinning the time for the takeout establishment to match the time of the restaurant closing, I think would make good sense.
The
just-
thing, yeah.
I
go
might
ahead.
want to add, and the attorney pointed that out to me. So what we consider Sam is a non-conforming use simply because it hasn't had a CUP, not because it's operating in any way that it's not allowed to. So if we expand into the other space, we might be looking, beyond what Sam's is. So tying it to Sam's is a beautiful way to continue this sort of non-conforming status. If we start looking at 23 or 23 and a half hours for the hold, as they're calling it right now, I think we could end up into a situation where it's not really tied to this other building and this other CUP. I'm just worried about a bid expansion or the impact that may have.
I'm also a little worried about compliance. So for one thing, I'm confused as to when we say the existing
not like
closing
there are
hours of the
no
restaurant,
existing
doesn't sound like
hours.
there are any.
Yeah,
So you've said it's posted 10 PM.
but,
But-
again,
but
it seems like they
it
could
varies.
change it tomorrow to 11 or
Right.
midnight or
And
1.
sometimes the restaurant will stay open even now beyond 10 PM if people potentially, we don't know, because there's really this isn't a regulated.
They don't have a regulation.
Process. So that does concern me now that I understand more clearly what the situation is. And I do have, we have done, there's a lot has come before us on Main Street, and we have heard from the community, the broader community and neighbors as to some of the impacts, the noise impacts to them. And so I want us to think about those as
I
we're
get-
talking through this. May I just finish?
Oh, sure.
And I'm a little nervous about compliance issues that there may be not to impugn anyone's integrity or anything, but there may be an effort to do more to extend beyond what we are envisioning here or would think of as acceptable to the broader community. So I think we need a little more clarity. I certainly don't have clarity, I'm realizing as we're having the discussion as to what we're talking about in terms of the closing.
Yeah, so that was what came up as the director was explaining, that if it's not governed today by any sort of conforming use of downtown or a conditional use permit, then for all intents and purposes, tying it to existing hours is tying it to nothing. And so I guess that would be my, kind of reverse concern. And I do think, something like the Hold, if the restaurant shuts down at 10 and for it to continue to serve for an hour or 2 hours, I think it makes perfect sense. If the restaurant shuts down at 10 and it finds a way to sort of service all of, whatever, maybe there's construction workers working around the clock, whatever, but now it's open until 4 a.m. or 5 a.m., or it starts because alcohol may be allowed, we don't know, to come in. Like, it just could change the entire dynamic. Now, I recognize those are hypotheticals and theoreticals, but at the same time, I think a more prudent approach would be to look at what conditional use permit times we have put in place for other establishments downtown. Certainly we have Bungalow and Malibu right next to it. I don't know if anything else was grandfathered in. The movie theater now serves alcohol and serves to-go food as well. Presumably they have some sort of time frames. I don't know if that is a known
So,
time right now.
so it's sort of similar to what you're saying, that the websites say one thing, they can be open a little bit later. I think in a lot of instances, with respect to the Bungalow, it was a midnight closing. Related to, I think, ABC, but I'm not really sure of that because I wasn't here at the time. Malibu's probably only open till 10. I mean, as I look through, and I don't have the memory of every single one I looked at, but I looked at websites similar to what you did to look at Google and see when they're open to. I think you tie it to, I mean, I believe the applicant had asked for it to be open till 2:30 in the morning. I don't know if
Well,
there's
I
ever
was-
anybody there at 2:30 in the morning in downtown Tiburon, but maybe this would bring people. Do we want people? What, I mean, that's up to you. I am concerned about, even though I understand from your side, point of view, Commissioner's eye, that it's hypothetical, except I will say it's not hypothetical because we do receive complaints about operation downtown. I have to go through the conditional use permits and look at what the operations are. And I do have to say to many residents, I'm really sorry, but they are allowed to deliver at 7 in the morning, or they are allowed to do this, or I've negotiated with restaurant owners to deliver after 5:30 in the morning. Make sure it's not before 7, so that our residents on Corinthian in particular are not disturbed and call the police or call me. So
Is there
it is hypothetical for this particular one because I have no idea how successful or not this will be. I think it's going to be successful because I think it's a niche that we don't have, and I want to support it. I also don't want to give it as much free rein. I think if we look at it from you could go to a 2:30 if that's what they're requesting, but that we have an actual time that it ends. It'd be much more
Is there
comforting.
any appetite for some sort of middle ground? I mean, but going back to what Commissioner Woodward said about, let's look at how when other establishments, food establishments are closing and we're looking at the cinema, we know that closes at 11. I had been thinking coming into this, maybe a midnight closing makes some sense to the extent people do want to come out of the cinema, they're hungry, they want to bite, there's time to do that, there's time, but there is an end point to this. I sort of feel like beyond midnight with people in and out into 2:30 in the morning, we have that at the bar, we have that next door, but it just, that is a little, I feel like that might not be as appropriate and could potentially lead to sort of a nuisance factor. But I do appreciate Commissioner Sai's point of let's allow for more let's allow this to be an extended kind of use that does bring vibrancy and gives people some options that currently don't exist.
It's interesting. I do think we actually have a proxy to this right next door, and that's the front third of Malibu Farms, and that they have takeout to go food. And yet, their hours of posted operations are like 9 p.m. on Friday and Saturday and 8:30 p.m. the rest of the day, the rest of the week. And I think that that's again tied to Commissioner Tsai's economic principles, which is, it's challenging to make that work. Now, I don't believe that they serve alcohol to go there. But again, I don't know that if you could take a bottle of wine home with your crab salad, I don't know that dramatically changes your desire to pick that up at 8:30 versus 1 a.m. So, and again, consistent with kind of the rest of downtown, we're certainly not trying to turn downtown into, I don't know, Nashville, someplace where people are coming here for bachelor and bachelorette parties until 2 a.m. So, and I don't think that that's the applicant's request either. So for me, and especially looking at their own hours of operations being posted at 10 p.m. at least right now, I think it makes perfectly logical sense to extend that window beyond the traditional close of the restaurant, but not so far into the middle of the night or what could potentially be the middle of the morning. And so I would be supportive of a midnight close. And I would even consider, although I'm sure Commissioner Tsai won't like this, but I would even
Later.
consider that midnight being Friday night and Saturday night, and potentially 11 p.m. The rest of the time. But I could easily go either way, because at the end of the day, this is a conditional use permit. What's the duration of the?
Right, I was wondering about the review period. Sometimes we build in a review period where we're sort of wanting to play without, or
You
try
can,
different
you
hours.
can do a review period. The use permit runs with the land. The only time there's sort of this stipulation is if they don't activate it within the first 2 years.
So
Then they'd have to come back to you.
in that sense, that's another way that we could thread the needle, between either of my esteemed commissioners, of earlier or later, and revisit it in 6 months or a year. With the idea that if there are effectively no complaints or no public opinions, otherwise it continues to ride. But I guess I would be on the conservative side, just given that their posted time to close today is 10 p.m., even though they asked for the 2:30 a.m. Window. I think our constituents would not be thrilled if this actually was going off at 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. But with the potential that it's noisy. And again, it may not be. It may be wildly successful, and in 6 months or a year, they could come back and ask for extended time.
I would be supportive, and I would be supportive of 7 a.m. to midnight with a 6-month review. And we can come back, and people may have some neighbors may have some feedback, or the applicant may say it's working so well, and they'll have supportive comments, and we'll consider later hours. That's what I could support tonight, which is what I thought I was supporting earlier. I just didn't recognize that potentially there was sort of a no end time to the existing establishment. So I don't know if any thoughts on that, or we can just go forward with the motion.
I think we are overcomplicating this issue and have over-rotated to the point where it is we have successfully kind of smashed this into a million pieces. The reality is, I'm more than happy to support the proposals put on the table. The reality is, though, if it's the case that there is no set time for when this business is allowed to close, it's meaningful and should be empirically important to everyone here, the fact that it isn't open until 4:30 in the morning. because businesses are market-driven entities. They will open as long as the market wants them to be open. And it's important, the fact that they just aren't. That said, to simplify this even more, which I think is why the proposal on the table is one that I am comfortable with, is they have asked for 2:30 in the morning. I think what I'm hearing, is there's discomfort with 2:30 in the morning. And so midnight then is the proposal. I can get behind midnight.
You'd have to
yeah,
open the
we
public
have to
hearing.
open the public hearing but I can reopen the public hearing to hear
For-
if there's,
for the- Yeah, we will have to open up.
yeah.
the
So if
public
you come up
comment
to respond to something we've said, we'll open up the hearing to see if members of the public have something to say. It could be useful to hear what
Yeah,
feedback.
thank you for thorough consideration. I think we just wanted to weigh in that, again, it's options. It is market driven. But if you say you close at 10, that's sort of less seating. People arrive, they might be there till 11. There's, in a way, a bit of the idea behind the hold was this is a little bit of a new entity in the sense that those late arrivals, they wanted a way to sort of say, yes, we can get you a meal, but here you go home. Right? Take it to go. The restaurant is closing, but so we're looking for that option to sort of say this is available during these sort of oddity hours up until say midnight is fine. I think the one request that we would make is it would be far better to say 7 to midnight every day of the week, just because then the community will not, well, which day are what's going on? They were, it will help our operations, and I think it'll also help the community understand this is what's going on in this instance with a little bit of clarity. Thank you.
I would support that. I don't know, provided we have I do still like the idea of the 6-month review.
You have to open up to the public.
I'm sorry, yes. So thank you so much for your comments. I'll reopen for public comments, no one's here with us, but is there anyone online who wishes to speak?
Chair Williams, there are no public
I will
comments.
close the public comment period and say that what I had started to say, which was I'd be supportive of that. I do think there's a consistency and clarity in terms of having the same hours throughout the week and over the weekend. This is, provided that there is a 6-month review period, I think that would give me confidence and comfort with the decision moving forward. So I think that's if I can make the motion, adopting the CUP, adopting the resolution, approving the CUP with modification to, and this is number 6. Let me just get to the resolution here. On page 3, Exhibit 1, page 3. And number 6 would be changed to the hours of operation of the takeout restaurant shall be weekdays and weekends from 7 a.m. to midnight.
Well, except that it
Yeah.
probably should say no earlier than 7
No,
a.m. and
That's,
no
yes,
than midnight,
yes.
because it otherwise is promulgating that they must be open
Yeah.
those precise
No
times.
earlier than 7 a.m. And no later than midnight. And then we add a condition calling for a 6-month review of the CUP.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay.
So the next agenda, as I understand it, the next public hearing item has been continued to a later date.
Yes, we had to work on some of the issues in it, and it will be coming to you on October 9th.
Do we have to make a motion to continue?
So can we
Just
do
make a
to
motion to
yeah.
continue. So we'll make a motion to continue this ADU update to the Planning Commission meeting of October 9th.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, guys.
Stuff.